Good morning, everybody, and thank you for the invitation to speak to you. Father Peter has given me the theme, Impossible Until It's Done. And I want to link to that, impossible until it's done for a nation to live according to its values. And I was inspired in preparing my thoughts today, not only the 100 years of Nelson Mandela, but reading an article in Vanity Fair by Monica Lewinsky. Some of you will remember Monica Lewinsky. It was 20 years ago, in 1998, that she had that famous affair with President Clinton. And 20 years later, she's writing in Vanity Fair her reflections about what she has learnt from that particular incident. And she's talking about the impact it's had on her, her personality and her career. She's talked about the impact that affair had on the nation. She talks about power, and she talks about individual responsibility and how important it is to be responsible for your own acts. And I found it an extraordinarily insightful article. A woman now in her 40s reflecting on decisions she made when she was 24. And when I was reading that story, I was also thinking of what's been happening in Parliament this week. Not only affairs of the heart, but of power and the importance of good behaviour and good manners. And it led me to think about the importance of walking the talk of our values. And that this theme for Lent, impossible until it's done, is to imagine a nation where we walk the talk of our values. And when I was thinking about it, there are so many examples where we as a nation do walk our talk. And there's so many examples in this church and in this community where I know people walk the talk of their Christian values. But there are a couple of exceptions that sprang to mind, and I wanted to talk briefly about one of them that's of enormous concern to me, and it's how we as a nation treat those who come here looking for asylum, and in particular how we as a nation treat refugees. How much further we could go. And I'm thinking of it's impossible till it's done. Both of the major parties in Canberra think it's impossible to change the way we treat our refugees. And it will be impossible until it's done. And I wanted to talk briefly about the power of community and grassroots action. And I was inspired not only by thinking about Monica Lewinsky, but the recent grassroots action, particularly in the United States and in England, of the Me Too movement and the enormous change that has brought about in attitudes to sexual harassment. And I'm thinking about, imagine a Me Too type movement in Australia around our treatment of refugees. And in my call to action today about it's impossible till it's done, what could we as a community in Albury-Wodonga, what sort of grassroots action could we take? What would be the hashtag to actually change our government's attitude to refugees? I haven't got the solution, but I do know that there are a whole lot of people thinking about this. And on the second week of April, the weekend after Easter, when Lent's finished, on the 6th and 7th and 8th of April in Wodonga, there's a group of people called Rural Australians for Refugees, and they're hosting a national conference in Wodonga. They're working out of Catholic College in Wodonga, and they're expecting between 300 and 400 people to attend. And I wanted to put it today that imagine if all of us attended, and our family and our friends. So instead of just 300 or 400 people, there was a good 1,000 people who came, and they were locals. They were locals of the church communities of Albury and Wodonga and surrounds. Because I know at this conference we are going to be talking about a nation that walks the talk of values. We're going to be talking about social justice And we're going to be talking about how can rural Australia change the way the nation thinks about how it treats its refugees. And I encourage you to come. The details are all on the webpage. So in bringing my comments to a close, everything is impossible until it's done. And changing our nation's view about refugees is impossible at the moment until it's done. And I'm hoping it will be grassroots community action from North East Victoria and Southern New South Wales that does this. And then I wanted to finish, if I could, with a quote that was in that Monica Lewinsky article, and she talks about a Mexican proverb, and she's talking about the change in attitudes that's certainly taken place in America. And she says, "They wanted to bury us, but they didn't know we were seeds."